Hey, this is Gary, and welcome back to my tutorial video on making a 2D game using LibGdx and building a game framework on top of that. Just a note, with the game framework, I have it out here on GitHub. It's underneath Azamon GD2 2D framework, and you can find it there. And you'll notice that there are tags for each version. So 0.0 or 0.1 was the last video, and as we make updates to this on a video, we'll increment those version numbers. Okay. All right, just to recap, here is our Palm file. So we're going to update this version 0.2, and we have our base game, base screen. Game tutorial is extending the base game, and we have our game screen, which extends base screen. Now we have some methods in here, pause, resume, and hide. What we're actually going to do is to reduce the clutter in this class, we're going to put that into our base screen. Let's stick it here. Right, so we have resize, dispose, and render. Now we're going to go over the basic methods for drawing an image, or a texture in this case. So one of the things that we're going to do is, since we have to dispose of all of our textures at the end, we're going to extract that functionality out. Just as a note, we're not going to be using the game tutorial. That isn't going to change. Our base game isn't going to change. So for getting textures, since we have to dispose of them, we're going to move it here into the base screen. We have a method to get the texture. It takes your file name. We're going to store those textures in a map so that we can cache them locally, so that if you get a texture with the same name, it will, instead of loading that texture again, it just uses the existing one. And so we'll call the textures map compute if absent, and pass in the file name. If the entry doesn't exist, it'll run this lambda where it'll create the new texture with that file name. And then when you dispose of the screen, it will go through the map of textures, pull out those textures, and call their dispose methods to clean that up, and then it will clear out the map when it's done. So in here, get texture. And then we can remove our dispose method. We're just down to 3 methods in this class. Makes it a lot cleaner. There it is. Now we're going to look at where the images are actually stored. If you create a game that's just for the desktop, there'll be an asset folder under desktop. When you create it with Android, it builds the asset folder and under Android. See, that's where Bad Logic game is. Bad Logic logo is. So I'm going to take this image, just created the image there, file name, run that. Right, so this is a PNG, so you can see that the background is transparent. So before we get started, we created a set background method. So you can either set the background color based on float values or the traditional 0 to 255 range. So for example, blue to 0, right? And you get the red, green, and brown color. Or yellow color because it's full power. Or you can use the GDX color object, and we use white. There we go, white background. All right, let's look into the draw methods for textures. This is the simple one, which takes a texture and the x and y coordinates as a float. Even though the X and Y are as a float, you'll want to render them as single integers so that they're at the pixel points on the screen. Otherwise, it's a fraction of a pixel. And you can't really render a fraction of a pixel. So this one just draws the image at that location, X and Y. And as you can see, there is a whole bunch of different methods for drawing textures. Some of these are for texture regions. We'll go into texture regions in another video. So we'll go into the next method. The next method we're going to use is resizing of the image. So I'll move this one out. And then it's this one here, width and height. So our image is 128, so we'll just double that, 256, 256. So I moved it over so that it will render next to the original. So we have a reference. And there it is, twice the size. And then we can also shrink it down, make it half the size. 64 by 64. And then of course you can make that essentially any size you want. And you can stretch the image. The next method we're going to look at will be to draw a region of the image. And it's going to be this one, where we'll have our source X, source Y, source width, source height. So this is actually of your source image, your X starting point, your Y starting point, how far your width and your height you want. So if I did 0, 0, 0, it wouldn't draw anything. If I start at 0 and then end at my 128, I just draw the image. So if I take my X and go over 64, now I'm on the right side of the image, and on my height, I set that to 64, so it'll be the right side, but top. I'll render that out. There you go, top right. And so you can pick any part of the image that you want. Let's say I go in 15 and 15, and let's say I do leave it 128, 128. So this will be 15 pixels in from the top and left, and still go 28. And what happens here is that at the edge, it'll draw it, that last pixel, over and over again. So let's say I want to narrow down what I'm drawing to be just her face. So I did these coordinates already. And there we go. We have just her face. We take out her shoulders, take out the extra, and there as well. And that's just drawing the region of an image. Next, we're going to look at a zoom method. We'll zoom in on a portion of the image. So this one is definitely a little more complicated. It's going to be this method right here. Whoops. So this method has U and V parameters, and U is for the horizontal. So this is from the left side to the right side, and then the vertical. And this is from the top to the bottom of the image. So to kind of clarify that, so if I did 0 float here, to 1 float to 1 here, and then 1 here, and then 0 here, and then, oh, I forgot. You need to specify your output width and height. So this essentially will redraw the existing image. I'll show you that. So there it is, it's the exact same image. And so if you wanted to this would resize your image. So it's very similar to just resizing. And then your percentage, the float, it actually works as a percentage. So if you did 0.25, that's 25%. And then if you did here 75%, so that's 75% of your image. 25 to 75% of your image. So it's taking the middle section right there. And since it's still 128, it stretches it. So for example, since I've got 50% of the image, cutting off the 2/4, make the width 64%, this will just draw the middle section. So if you wanted, you could say, so let me leave that. We'll put that back to the full size of the image as a reference. And then we'll play with our image a little bit. So here we'll zoom in on, say, her eye. So we'll go 30% in. We'll only go up to 50%, and then we'll go over 45% and say 35%. And that's a zoom in on her image. On her, zoom in on the image, it's just her eye showing. So let's actually look at, so we looked at the width of it, and let's play with the height. So if I did 75% and 25%. So there you go, it's got the top 25% down, and then all the way to 75%. And so you can see this last digit is from the top percentage down, and then this third from last, which is the first V, is the percentage down to the bottom. So now let's say that if you wanted to zoom in on like a portion of her eye, so this is already pre-calculated this to get the portion of her eye. And there that is. So if you wanted to make that closer to kind of the size of the eye, you have to figure out your pixel percentage. There you go, it's a little bit closer. So another thing about this zoom feature, let's say that we reverse these, make all of our 1s 0, so now we're the opposite. This actually flips the image. There it is, now it's upside down, and then you see the curl is on this side, so it flips it horizontally and vertically. Okay, the next method we're going to look at is one that does more of resizing and flipping of the image. And so it is actually going to be this one here. So it also does the zoom in that we looked at previously, and it also adds flipping to it. And it also adds resizing, so you have your height and your width. So we'll just start off with our height and our width. We'll just, at this point, just use 0, 0, and our source width 128, and then we're going to flip both. So this will give us a flipped of the image. Resizing and portion and flipping. So there we did. We just did a flipping. So there's two ways to flip an image. One is using the U and V's, and the other one is using this method. And so this one also, you can get a portion of the image, and so you don't have to use the percentage. You're just like where we drew the region up here. So if I did the same coordinates as that one, 15, 5, 100, and 105, which is just her head, we can now take that and flip it as well. There it is. So, and as you can see, this one, I resized it, so it's now enlarged. And so if I wanted to make sure that it was the same size as what I'm cutting, there it is. And so this is flipping off of the x-axis, which is side to side, and this is the y-axis, which is up and down. So if I don't flip it here, then it'll just be flipped side to side. There it is, just flipped. So now the curl's on the other side. Okay, next we're going to look at the method for rotation. And that is actually this first method. And you have your origin, X and Y, and so that's the origin of your rotation, your height and width, and a scale, and a rotation, source X and Y, source width and height, and then flipping. So this is like a combination of everything. All right, so let's make it simple at first. So we're gonna do 0, 0, which is our origin. This is the origin of the rotation. And then we'll do, the next one is our width and height. This is the width and height output. The next one is our scale. So we'll just do a single scale, 1. I think I have that right. Then we have our rotation. Let's do 15. So that's rotation in degrees. And then our source, we'll just do the full image. And then there's flipping. So that's a lot to put in just to rotate your image. So there it is. So I set the origin to 0, 0. It's the same size. And so if I wanted to, this is my source. So if I just wanted to do just like the face, like I did before, I could do that. So there it is. Now our face is just rotated. Next, we're going to look at colorizing the image. So to colorize an image, you want to go into your batch and you want to set the color. We'll do color red. Now I'm purposely leaving it set to red just to show you what happens if you don't reset it. And what ends up happening is the color gets set to red and doesn't change. So you actually need to reset your color after you colorize something. And so to do that, you want to set it to white. Now I know that there is a batch, or there's a color that is clear, and that actually just makes it invisible. So I'll show you that. There it is. So this is, we're setting it clear, that image doesn't show, that image doesn't show, and this is we're setting to red and that image does show. So what you want to do to restore from colorizing is just set it to white. And that's just, there it is. It's white and then turn to red. And there you go. Okay, and that's all I'm going to cover in this video. And the next video I will cover in texture regions and animation, and I'll upload these latest versions to GitHub and you can view the source there. So we'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.